This is Dr. Eddie Morgan at Clovis East High School, and we're looking at homework help for worksheet 1.6. Remember again, each of the problems in the homework help is extremely similar to the problem in the homework. So if you look at the homework problem and look at this one, you should be able to figure out how to do the homework problem. So let's get started. Our problems today involve proportions. And you'll notice here that it gives us the electric bill for the Ferguson family is shown at the right, and the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour. Remember, the per sign tips you off that we have cost divided by kilowatt hour, okay? And the total charges are given. They want to know how many kilowatt hours of electricity did they use in 1 month. Well, first of all, the cost per hour is we have $0.08 per 1 kilowatt hour. That's our rate. And in their case, let me set up a proportion. Notice I have dollars on top and kilowatts on the side. They were charged $165.22, and we want to find out how many hours that was. So notice it's 8 cents per kilowatt hour. They had 165.22, and we want to know how many hours. So now we have a simple proportion. And the easiest way to solve proportions is to cross multiply. Remember that cross multiply is not a trick. What we're actually doing is like when we want to get rid of fractions, we multiply by the denominator. We're actually multiplying by the x and then multiplying by the 1. So I'm going to do that. Cross multiply here, and I get 0.08x equals 1 times 165.22. Okay, so we got 0.08x equals 165.22, and now solve for x. To undo times 8 cents, we divide by 8 cents, both sides again. That's 1, and our answer is going to be, get out the calculator, 165.22 divided by 0.08, and my answer is going to be 2065.25 kilowatt hours. So the Ferguson furniture used about a little over 2,065 kilowatt hours, and that's how they arrived at their bill of 165.22. All right, in this problem, we may have to do a little conversion. It says a particular computer takes 12 minutes to download a 60-minute TV show. So that's the rate that we're working with. So the time of the download is 12 minutes, and the length of the program is 60 minutes. So it takes 12 minutes to download 60 minutes. Now, they want to know how long it's going to take. So that's going to be my time here. I don't know that. Will it take to download a 3-hour movie? Now, notice that I'm not going to put down here 3 hours. I can, but it doesn't mesh up, 60 minutes and 3 hours. So what I can do is change this into minutes. So I'm going to rewrite this as 12 minutes is to 1 hour, as t is to 3 hours. Notice I changed them both to hours, so now my proportion is set up right. By the way, I could have changed this to 3 times 60, 180 minutes, and said 60 to 180, but I thought I'd go with that. So now let's cross multiply. So I get 3 times 12 equals 1 times t, or 36 equals t. So the amount of time it's going to take for 3 hours is it's going to take 36 minutes. All right. Remember, when you're setting up the proportions, make sure that when you go across, you're dealing with the same units in the same part of the proportion. In this problem, it says that you want to meet a friend at a park that is 5 miles away. And you're going to bike to the park, and you're going 10 miles per hour. Your friend, however, only lives 1.5 miles away, but he's going to walk at 3 miles per hour. And the question is, how many minutes ahead of you should your friends start out so that you get to the park at the same time? Well, this is a fairly simple problem, and although it involves several parts. And I'm going to work it by simply solving two parts and then comparing them. First of all, how long does it take you to get to the park? Well, I'm going to set up a proportion using the fact that we're dealing with miles per hour. And I just write that out because it's easier when you set up a proportion if you write that to sort of know that you get the right numbers and the right numbers. So for example, I'm 5 miles away from the park, so the miles goes on top. How long does it take me? That's what I'm trying to find out, so I'll put my X there. And then it says that I am biking 10 miles per hour, so 10 miles per 1 hour. And now I have a proportion that I can solve. And X is in the bottom, so I'm going to use the cross product. So 5 times 1 equals 10 times X. And now we divide by the coefficient of the variable. So 10 times X, the opposite of multiplying by 10 is dividing by 10. And we end up with X equals 5/10, or X equals 1/2 hour. Or in this case, you could say that's 30 minutes. Now, how about my friend? Exactly the same calculation. We're going to do miles per hour. This time he lives 1.5 miles away, and I'm going to use Y because it's a different amount for him. And he walks at 3 miles per 1 hour. So just like before, I'm going to have 1.5 equals 3Y. Undo the 3 times Y by dividing by 3. That goes to 1, just like that did up there, which implies that Y equals 1.5 divided by 3, which interestingly, decimal-wise, is 0.5, or again, 1/2. So it's going to take him exactly the same amount of time because he lives closer and travels slower. So the answer is how many minutes ahead? 0 minutes. We're going to get there at the same time. Okay, good problem. In the next problem, they ask us to solve each proportion, but they want to know if we're just going to use the multiplication property of equality or the cross products property. And the answer to this always depends on where the variable is. If the variable is in the numerator, we don't need to use the cross products because we can simply undo the division. When the variable is in the denominator, that's when we use the cross product. So in our first case, as I write this out, I'll just rewrite the problem here. Notice my variable is in the top, and it's simply P divided by 3. All I have to do is undo the divide by 3. The opposite, the inverse of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. See, 3 divided by 3 is 1. It leaves me with P, but I have to do it to the other side as well. Times 3. Notice here, 3 goes into 6 2 times. So my answer is 7/2. That's my answer. If they wanted to not have an improper fraction, remember if I take 2 and divide it into 7, it goes 3 times with 1 left over, remainder 1. So I could have also written P equals 3 1/2. The second problem is just like the other one. Notice the M is in the numerator. So when I go to solve this, I don't need to cross multiply. I just have to undo divide by 5.5. The inverse operation of dividing by 5.5 is multiplying by 5.5. So that's 1, and I'm left with M. And in this case, 5 goes into 5.5 1.1 time. So I have 3 times 1.1, and so my answer is M equals 3.3. Problem number 6, once again, let me write it out and ask, where is the variable? Well, the variable is in the numerator again, right there. So all I have to do is not cross products, just say, what's the opposite of dividing by 5? Multiplying by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 goes into 10 2 times, and so once again I have 7/2 equals B, or like the other problem with the same answer, number 4, it's also 3 1/2. 7 has decimals, but let's not panic. Write this as r over 2.4 equals 4.2 over 3.6. By the way, if you wanted to get rid of decimals here, you said, decimals just make me nervous. Well, let's multiply everything on this side by 10 over 10 and this side by 10 over 10. And notice when I do that, I get 10r, and then I get 24 equals 42 over 36. All my decimals just disappeared. Okay? Now, to undo this, what I'm going to do is I am going to undo divide by 24 by multiplying by 24. That goes away, and I'm left with 10r. And now 24, if I look at this, I could multiply it all out with my calculator and figure this out, but notice there's a 12 that goes into 24. 12 goes into 24 2 times, and 12 goes into 36 3 times. So what I end up here with is 84 divided by 3. If I put 84 into 3, 84 goes in 2 times into 8, 3 goes in that 2 times 2, and 24, 8. So 10r equals 28. And now to finish it off, we're going to have to divide by 10 to get rid of that. And so we get r equals 28 divided by 10, or 2.8. Notice the only disadvantage of getting rid of all my decimals here was that I end up having to go back to a decimal because I have to divide out the 10. If I had just multiplied everything by 2.4, I would have gotten there directly. But if you need to get rid of the decimals, you can do that if they're still giving you that fraction brain freeze or that decimal brain freeze. Now, the next problem, notice where the variable is. Now the variable is sitting here in the bottom. So when I write the problem out here, I can't say, oh, 4 is divided by n, so let's undo it by multiplying by n. Well, I could, but that's going to get me just more over there. This is where we actually end up using our cross product. And in reality is we are going to multiply this side by n and the other side by 17. So if I multiply first through here, I get 12n equals 17 times 4. So 12n is going to equal 4 times 7 is 28, carry the 2, 68. And now to undo this, we're going to undo the 12n by dividing by 12. So we get n equals 68 divided by 12. All right? And 12 goes into 68 5 times. 12 into 68 goes in 5 times, that's 60. And 8 left over, so we get 5 and 8 twelfths. 4 goes into each of those, so that's actually equal to 5 and 2/3. So there's our answer. Number 9, like number 8, it's in the bottom. So we're going to go 1.8 divided by y equals 2.4 divided by 9. So because it's in the bottom, I don't have a one-step solution like before. I'm going to need to cross multiply. So first I'm going to have 9 times 1.8 equals 2.4 times y. So 9 times 8 is 72. Carry the 7. 1 times 9 is 7. 1 times 9 is 9, plus 7 is 16, and that's 16.2, I got 1 decimal point, equals 2.4y. And now we'll undo 2.4 times y by dividing by 2.4. That goes to 1, and so now my y is going to equal 16.2 divided by 2.4. So let me do that up here, see if I can do that quickly. 2.4 into 16.2. When we divide decimals, remember, just simply move the decimal 1 there, and so whatever you move there, you move it here too. And just looking at that, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, 2 into 16 is about 8, but this is like 2.5, probably going to be less than that. And the answer here is actually 6. 6 times 4 is 24, carry the 2. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 2 is 14, and we get 8, carry the 1, 18. So we're going to bring a 0 in here, bring down a 0. And at this point, how many 24s go into 180? 7 of them, one more of that. 7 times 4 is 28, carry the 2, 14 is 16. And now we get 12 and 120, and then it looks like this is going to be our answers. 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2, 12. And so our answer is y equals 6.75. That's one that probably would have been easier to have done simply with your calculator. Notice again 8 and 9 compared to the 4 previous. Because the variable in the proportion was in the denominator, we used the cross product property. All right. Now when you look at 10, we're going to have to use the cross products because the variable's in all of them. Okay. So don't let these things confuse you, but let's start by the cross products. First of all, 2 times minus 3b equals 5 times b plus 12. So we'll multiply. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6b, and here we need to use the distributive property. 5 times b is 5b, plus 5 times 12 is 60. Now we have a situation, we go back to what we learned before. Let's get all the variables on one side. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and get all the variables on the left side. So to undo plus 5b, I'm going to minus 5b. So I end up with 60, that's 0, equals minus 11b. And now to undo this, I'm going to undo multiply by minus 11 by dividing by minus 11. Don't forget the negative sign. And I'm going to get that b equals negative 60 over 11. That's a really nasty number. So that doesn't simplify at all, so we'll just leave it alone like that. Similarly, in number 11, let's cross multiply. So right here I have 5 times b minus 2 equals 7 times 5b. So use our distributive property, 5b minus 5 times 2 is 10 equals 5 times 7 is 35b. So let's get all the variables on one side. Let's move the 5b to the right. So we're going to subtract 5b from both sides. And I get negative 10 equals 30b. Now let's divide both sides by 30 to undo the multiply by 30. And I end up with b equals negative 10 over 30, which is negative 1/3. 12 is very much alike. Again, we're going to use the cross product property. 3 times 2x minus 8 equals 10 times x plus 2. This time we'll use the distributive property on both sides. So I have 6x minus 24 equals 10x plus 20. So let's gather all the variables on one side. This time 6 is smaller than 10, so let's get rid of the 6x. By subtracting 6x from both sides, that goes away and I get minus 24 equals 4x plus 20. And now we have a two-step equation. So we always usually undo the addition or subtraction first. So undo plus 20 by subtracting 20. So we get minus 44 equals 4x. And then we undo the multiplication by 4 by dividing by 4. It goes to 1. That went to 0, by the way. And we end up with negative 11 equals x, or just flip that around and say x equals minus 11. In number 13, it gives us an error analysis. We're asked to describe and correct the error in solving the proportion at the right. So notice the first thing they're going to do here is they're going to multiply. And if I write this out, we can see where they make the error. 8 over 5 equals x plus 2 over 3. Well, they're obviously going to multiply. So the first thing they did was multiply 3 times 8, and they got 24, and that's right. The second part, though, was to multiply 5 times x plus 2. Now watch the distribution here. it's going to be 5 times x, 5x, but then it's also 5 times 2, so plus 10. You see the error they made there? They forgot that they multiplied the 5 times the x, but they left the 2. They did not go 5 times 2. Very common error, but that's where they made the error. And so let's finish it up. So this is a two-step problem. So undo plus 10 by subtracting 10. So I get 14 equals 5x, and then undo 5 times x by dividing by 5. And we end up with 14 over 5 equals x, or, turn it around, x equals 14 over 5. 14 is a word problem. A bakery sells 10 bagels for $4.29. If the bakery starts selling bagels in packages of 12, how much would you expect them to cost? Well, we can set up the proportion. We can set it up either as bagels per dollar or dollars per bagel. It's not going to matter. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to set up bagels. I'm going to set up the dollars. Dollars, the cost of the dollars per bagel. Well, right now, they get 10 bagels. So the bagels, notice how I use my words to know where to put the 10, for $4.29. We want to know what would it cost for 12. So there's our bagels. If $4.29 for 10, how much for 12? All right. Now, one nice thing about setting it up this way, my variable is in the top, so I don't need to cross multiply. All I need to do is undo divide by 12 by multiplying by 12. So we'll multiply by 12, that goes away. And so at this point, I have 12 times 4.29 divided by 10 equals x. So let's just get out our calculator and do this one. So I have 12 times 4.29 that equals 51.48 divided by 10. And we divide by 10, which is simply moving the decimal, and we get 5.148 equals x. Now, how much would I expect the package to cost? They're not going to charge me 4.148, so we're going to round off to the nearest penny. There's the nearest penny. I look to the right. Is that number old enough to go to school? Sure, he's bigger than 5. So 4 will go up. And so my answer is probably going to be, x is going to be about $5.15 for a package of 12. By the way, if I had done this backwards, if I had done bagels per dollar, notice I would set this up again and I would have 10 to 4.29 equals 12x. Now the x is on the bottom. I would actually have to cross multiply and say that 10x equals 4.29 times 12. And then I would have to divide by 10. And notice I would get the same thing here that we had there. I get the same answer. It's just in this one I have to cross multiply, whereas over here where the variable's on the top, it was more of a simple step.